Thank you very much. Thank you. Today I'm honored to welcome my friend, Prime Minister Turnbull of Australia, and Mrs. Turnbull. Thank you very much. It's a great honor. We're looking forward to sending our newly nominated ambassador, Admiral Harry Harris, to you very shortly. He's an outstanding man. You're going to find that. He's a great man. I want to thank the Prime Minister for offering his condolences on the horrible tragedy in Parkland, Florida. Americans are grateful for the prayers and support of our Australian friends, and friends they are, as our entire nation grieves the senseless loss of 17 precious lives and all of the horribly injured. The United States and Australia are currently honoring 100 years of mateship, a term that you used very beautifully, Mr. Prime Minister. A century has passed since brave Americans and Australians first fought together in World War I. Over the last 100 years, our partnership has thrived as a bulwark of freedom, security, and democracy. Last spring, the Prime Minister and I celebrated the remarkable 100-year milestone during an extraordinary evening on the USS Intrepid. And my friend Greg Norman and Anthony Pratt and some of the others who are in the room today, they were, hello folks, stand up Greg, stand up Anthony, where's Anthony? Good, it was a great evening, thank you. This afternoon I'm pleased to announce that the United States will name the Littoral Combat Ship 30, the USS Canberra, in honor of an Australian cruiser lost fighting alongside the U.S. Navy during World War II. Our Secretary of the Navy has chosen Australian Minister of Defence, Maurice Payne, to be her sponsor. I know that the USS Canberra will be a worthy successor to both her Australian namesake and her American predecessor, the former Navy Baltimore-class heavy cruiser, USS Canberra. As she sails the open sea, the new USS Canberra will symbolize to all who cross her path the enduring friendship between the United States and Australia. There is no closer friendship. Today, strengthened by our common values and history, we're working together to promote our mutual interests. I want to thank the Prime Minister for serving as a strong voice for peace and stability across the entire Indo-Pacific region. Australia is one of our closest partners in our campaign of maximum pressure to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. Today, we put the strongest sanctions on Korea that we have ever put on a country. We must continue to stand together to prevent the brutal dictatorship from threatening the world with nuclear devastation. Our nations likewise share a commitment to keeping our people safe from terrorism. Australian troops are currently serving alongside Americans and our partners in Afghanistan and the coalition to defeat ISIS. Together, we're denying terrorists safe haven, cutting off their funding, and discrediting their wicked ideology. ISIS land has been largely recaptured, almost 100%. I'm very honored to say. And they are on the run. Our strong partnership can also be seen in our flourishing economic relationship. Australia remains a key market for U.S. defense products. We make the greatest products in the world, so you have very good taste in choosing our product. Automobiles and aircraft, and our fair and reciprocal trading relationship is a model for other countries as we seek bilateral agreements. News that America is open for business has also reached Australian shores. In May, Australian entrepreneur Anthony Pratt announced a new $2 billion investment in box-making factories across the United States. But he only did that if Trump won the election, I think. Is that a correct statement, Anthony? Thank you. Boy, that was a close one. I was worried. These people would have had a field day if you gave the wrong answer. Thank you. No, but Anthony did call, and he said if he wins the election, we're going to spend billions of dollars in the United States. And I appreciate your giving me a very, very correct comment. Thank you, Anthony. I'll never do that again. This investment will continue to build on an almost 100,000 American jobs that are taking place and already supported by Australian companies. I'm glad to share that the United States is also by far the largest investor in Australia. In the room today are dozens of American and Australian business leaders and great athletes, great athlete and business leader, by the way, Greg, who are working together to identify further opportunities for bilateral investment and cooperation. Mr. Prime Minister, I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your immigration reforms and on Australia's commitment to merit-based immigration. Are my friends from Congress listening to that? Merit-based. We want to do merit-based immigration also. And then we will. That really protects the interest of Australia and its people. It's the way to go. And you've been very successful with it here. We're working very hard to do the same. In that sense, we're going to hopefully follow in your footprints. Prime Minister Turnbull, it's been a pleasure to host you today. We had a great lunch with your representatives. A lot was discussed. A lot of deals were made for the purchase of additional military equipment and other things. For a century now, the people of the United States and Australia have inspired the world with their determination, their bravery, and their generosity. I know that our close friendship and enduring alliance and our personal friendship will grow even stronger in the century to come. Our relationship with Australia will always be a very powerful and very successful relationship. It's been incredible, and it's only getting better. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, thank you so much. Lucy and I want to thank you and First Lady Melania Trump for your very warm welcome, your generous hospitality and friendship. Our meeting today was a great opportunity to strengthen and deepen our engagement with the United States. You are our most important strategic and economic partner, and to lay the groundwork for a new phase of intensified cooperation, the next 100 years of mateship. Now, I'm here, as you noted, Mr. President, with the most substantial Australian delegation ever to travel to Washington, D.C. We have, in addition to the CEOs, several of whom you have identified here today, who are busy creating jobs, and we spent much of our time today talking about jobs. They are creating jobs in Australia and in the United States, demonstrating that our two great nations committed to competition, to freedom, to economic innovation, science and technology working together, complement each other, and that's why we're seeing strong jobs growth in both countries. We've had 403,000 jobs created last year in Australia, the largest number, Mr. President, in our country's history, in 16 months of continued jobs growth. And we have been inspired, I have to say, by your success in securing the passage of the tax reforms through the Congress. We have secured some tax reforms in terms of reducing company tax, but not as much as we need to do. We've got more work to do. And the stimulus, the economic stimulus that your reforms have delivered here in the United States is one of the most powerful arguments that we are deploying to persuade our legislature to support reducing business tax, because as you are demonstrating, and as we all know, when you cut company tax, most of the benefit goes to workers, it produces more investment, and when you get more investment, you get more jobs. And of course, I'm also joined on this visit with 6 of the leaders of our states and territories. The only 2 that are not here, Mr. President, are those that are fighting elections. So as you can imagine, that's always a top priority. And we're meeting at the National Governors Association, again, broadening and deepening the relationship. We have a huge amount to work with. Our relationship, as you said, has been forged over a century through times of war and peace, securing both our nation's freedom and security in the world. But our relationship is based not only on history. We have the same values. We share a deep well of trust and spirit based on those enduring values of freedom, democracy, the rule of law, enterprise, ingenuity, the spirit of having a go, and if it doesn't work out, dust yourself off and have another go. That is a core American and Australian value. That spirit of enterprise is what leads us on. And of course, our relationship is underpinned by millions of people-to-people and family links, and of course the extensive economic cooperation we've spoken about. Our security alliance is as close as it possibly could be, yet keeps getting closer. The cooperation is more intense than it has ever been. Whether we are standing up for freedom's cause in the Middle East, in our region, around the world, combating terrorism, the cooperation in a connected world that we need to have is greater than ever. And that trust between Australia and the United States, between the thousands of brave servicemen and women who are working together right now, that trust underpins our security. And you mentioned, Mr. President, our economic relationship and trade. Do you know, since the Australia-US Free Trade Agreement came into force in 2005, two-way trade has grown by over 50%. The United States does have a trade surplus with Australia of $25 billion. It's your third largest trade surplus with us. But, you know, we know it works for both of us. The two-way investment has more than doubled in the past decade. It was worth around $1.1 trillion in 2016. Again, boosting jobs and growth in both our nations, both our economies. And today, we've agreed on some new initiatives that will deepen this relationship further. We're seeking to expand transparent and competitive global energy markets, cooperating on high-quality infrastructure investment in the United States and in the region. We've spent a lot of time talking about infrastructure, including urban infrastructure, a subject, Mr. President, of course, you have a lifetime of experience in, and the leadership you're showing on infrastructure in the United States is being admired around the world, and Australian companies and Australian experience is there to help, as you know, and is already operating here. A number of our infrastructure players are very active in the US. We're obviously working to intensify our cooperation on digital trade. Bob Lighthizer and Wilbur Ross from your side, Steve Chobo, my trade minister who's here with them today, have made terrific progress in that regard. Now, we turn to security. Yesterday, Lucy and I were with General Dunford at the Arlington National Cemetery. And we honoured America's war dead. We honoured an Australian airman who had died in combat in New Guinea in the Second World War, who was buried there at Arlington also. And we are reminded that all of the freedoms we enjoy, whether it is in our Parliament in Canberra or here in Washington in the White House or in the Congress, all of those freedoms have had to be secured generation after generation by courageous men and women defending freedom's cause. Our freedoms have depended on them. And Americans know, as Australians know, that each of us have no better ally. We are mates, 100 years of mateship. We're working together, as you said, to address the greatest threat to our region right now, North Korea's illegal nuclear weapons program. And I want to welcome and, of course, support, Mr. President, the new sanctions that have been announced today. And we continue to do precisely the same with our own autonomous sanctions and, of course, enforcing the UN Security Council mandated sanctions. We're working to combat terrorism around the world, helping the Iraqis and the Afghans build up the resilience to hold their countries secure in the face of terrorists. And of course, we both recognise that the prosperity of our region, and indeed the world, has been underpinned and in fact built on a foundation of a rules-based order which has been secured by the leadership of the United States ever since the Second World War. That leadership has been critical. And the commitment you showed, Mr. President, when you came out to the region, to the East Asia Summit, to APEC last year, that commitment was so important. It spoke volumes for America's continued commitment to our region, to our part of the world, to the Indo-Pacific. So vital. The engine room, if you like, of the fastest economic growth, the most rapid economic growth that we've seen in our times. Now, Mr. President, I want to thank you, as I have earlier in our meetings. I want to thank you for the very rare honour you have shown to Australia by naming one of your future littoral combat ships, the USS Canberra. That is, what a great symbol of our alliance and our shared security endeavours. What an extraordinary statement of commitment. And it's worth observing that that ship will be built by Austal in Mobile, Alabama. So you have an Australian company with American workers operating in the United States, building ships for the US Navy. What a great example of 100 years of mateship. And when you grieve, as you said, you noted at the outset, so do we. So we send our love, our prayers and our condolences to all of the victims and their families of the shocking shooting in the school in Florida. We are mates, we stand by each other, and when we are hurt as well. So, Mr. President, thank you for your warm welcome. 100 years of mateship. We celebrate 100 years ago on July 4. General John Monash led American and Australian troops into battle in the First World War for the first time. And we've been side by side ever since. 100 years of mateship celebrated and 100 more years to look forward to, closer than ever. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Malcolm. That's very beautiful words, and we appreciate it. On behalf of the First Lady, who is right here, and our great Vice President, Mike, thank you very much. It's an honor to have you. And we'll answer a couple of questions. Is that okay? Yeah. How about Trey from One America News? Trey, where are you? Hi. Good, Trey. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
I have a couple questions for you. If you
how about one? Go ahead,
compromise it too. Following mass shootings, there's often a lot of talk and little action. So I ask you today, what specific pieces of legislation or legislative framework will you propose to lawmakers following the Parkland shooting? Well,
we're going to do a lot, but we are going to be very strong on background checks. I've spoken with many of our people in Congress, our senators, our congressmen and women, and there's a movement on to get something done. We want to be very powerful on background checks. When we're dealing with the mentally ill, as we were in this last case, he was a very sick person and somebody that should have been nabbed. I guess they had 39 different occasions where they were able to see him or potentially see him. We want to be very powerful, very strong on background checks, and especially as it pertains to the mentally ill. We're going to get rid of the bump stocks, and we're going to do certain other things. But one of the feelings that I have, and you probably heard me in a speech this morning, very, very important that we have offensive capability as well as defensive capability that's within the schools, because when you have a gun-free zone, you're really inviting people to come in and do whatever you have to do and oftentimes get out. Now, I was the one that brought up the fact that these shootings on average last 3 minutes, and it takes anywhere from 6 to 10 minutes for the police to get to the site. and I want to have people in the building. And in many cases, you have ex-Marines and ex-Army and Navy and Air Force and Coast Guard. You have them in the building, and they can have concealed weapons and still be teachers, or they could be in the building in a different capacity. But we have to have offensive capability to take these people out rapidly before they can do this kind of damage. But we'll be putting in strong language having to do with the background checks, and that'll take place very quickly. I spoke with Paul Ryan this morning, with Mitch McConnell, and people are looking to really energize. I know that this has been going on for a long time, many, many years, and you've had people in my position, and they would mention things, but not a lot of things got done, obviously. We take it very seriously. We want to put an end to it. And if, by the way, the bad guy thinks that somebody's in this room with a weapon that's going to be pointed at him with live bullets, he's not even going into the school. It's the one way you're going to solve it. You're not going to solve it with gun-free spaces, because they'll get in there and they're going to be the only one with a gun. So we need offensive capability, and we're going to be doing something about it. We're dealing with Congress right now. Thank you.
If I can follow up, Mr. President, amid talks of arming teachers and mental health, what specific commitments to American students can you make that these policies will make them safer?
Well, I think it's going to make it safer. And, you know, the problem that's been happening over the last 20 years is people have talked. You said it. It's all talk. It's no action. And we're going to take action. I think it's going to make it safer. I think the fact that you have some capability within a school, they're not going to go into that school. They're not going to do it. You can look at what's happened with airplanes, where we put marshals on planes with guns, where pilots in many cases have guns. Nothing's happened for a long period of time, when it used to it was getting to a point of being routine. When you have somebody with a gun staring you down, it's going to be a lot different for them to walk into those schools. Right now, they look at the sign outside, this is a gun-free environment. That means they're the only one with a gun. And the damage this lunatic did in that school for such a long period of time. And frankly, you had a gun, and he was outside as a guard, and he decided not to go in. That was not his finest moment, that I can tell you. He waited, and he didn't want to go into the school. I just heard this, and it's a terrible situation. But we need people that can take care of our children. We're not going to let this happen again. And the way it's not going to happen again, because they're basically cowards. Innately, they're cowards. And if they know bad things happen to them once they get into that school by people that love the children. See, a security guard doesn't know the children, doesn't love the children. This man standing outside of the school the other day doesn't love the children, probably doesn't know the children. The teachers love their children. They love their pupils. They love their students. They're doing it also from love. Now, they have to be very adept. I'm not talking about every teacher. I'm talking about a small percentage. But people that have great ability with weaponry, with guns, those are the only people I'm talking about. But they'll protect the student. For the Prime Minister?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for joining us today here in Washington. Australia is known for helping the Syrian people and Syrian refugees. So I ask you today, as the world watches, what steps can Australia take with the help of President Trump and the United States to ensure that civilians are protected in eastern Ghouta?
Well, the Australian Armed Forces have been working as part of the coalition to defeat Daesh in Iraq and Syria for some time now. Our principal concentration or focus of our efforts now is in Iraq as opposed to Syria, where we are training both their elite special forces unit, their counter-terrorism service, and their regular army and armed police. We have trained over 30,000 personnel at our task force Taji, which is based at the Taji airfield near Baghdad. In terms of refugees, Australia has a very substantial humanitarian program. We're currently taking about 18,000 refugees a year. We've taken 12,000 in addition to that, from the Syrian conflict zone. But we determine we are very careful about security, of course, in terms of our humanitarian program. But I think it'd be fair to say the President has, of course, the most insight into this area here, but it'd be fair to say that ultimately the resolution in Syria has to be a political settlement, and that, I'm sure, is what Secretary Tillerson is working towards.
And if I could briefly follow up, specifically though in Syria, as two of the most powerful men in the entire world, is there anything that you can do to stop the bloodshed?
Well, ultimately there has to be a political settlement. It is the campaign to destroy Daesh or ISIL has been largely completed. The so-called caliphate has been reduced down to a few pockets. It has been smashed, and Americans and Australians have worked bravely, effectively with our allies and partners in the region to do that. That's very important, by the way, to keep Australians and Americans safe at home, because the image of ISIL's invincible caliphate, sweeping across Syria and Iraq, and they said they were going to sweep across Europe, all of that was a big recruiting tool. So this was a very important part of our global effort. But ultimately, the settlement in that region has to come from a political settlement among the people who live there.
I will say what Russia and what Iran and what Syria have done recently is a humanitarian disgrace. I will tell you that. We're there for one reason. We're there to get ISIS and get rid of ISIS and go home. We're not there for any other reason. And we've largely accomplished our goal. But what those three countries have done to people over the last short period of time is a disgrace. Okay, would you like to ask a question, Mr. Prime Minister?
Yes, I think, yes, we're Phil Curry from the Australian Financial Review.
Thanks, gentlemen. Mr. Trump, Mr. Turnbull, Phil Curry from the Financial Review. To you, Mr. Trump, just on the region and China and associated issues, the United States Navy has conducted frequently freedom of navigation sail-throughs through the disputed areas. Would you like to see the Australian Navy participate directly in those operations alongside the US allies? And whilst on the region, could I ask you what your latest thinking is on the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Are you softening your opposition to that, or do you remain as opposed as ever?
Well, I think the Trans-Pacific Partnership was not a good deal for us. And if they made it a good deal for us, I'd go in. But honestly, it wasn't. I like bilateral deals much more than multilateral. I like to be able to negotiate with one country, and if it doesn't work out, you terminate. And during the termination notice, right after you get sent, they call you and they say, please, let's make a deal, and you fix the deal. When you get into multi, you can't do that. But Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP was a very bad deal for the United States. It would have cost us tremendous amounts of jobs, would have been bad. But there's a possibility we would go in, but they will be offering us a much better deal. I would certainly do that. As far as your lanes are concerned, we'd love to have Australia involved, and I think Australia wants us to stay involved. I have to say we've developed a great relationship with China, other than the fact that they've been killing us on trade for the last long period of time. Killing us, absolutely killing the United States on trade. But we have developed a great relationship with China, probably closer than we've ever had. And my personal relationship, as Malcolm can tell you, with President Xi is, I think, quite extraordinary. He's somebody that I like, and I think he likes me. With that being said, he likes China, and I like the United States. But a lot of things are happening. It's going to be a very interesting period of time. But we do have to straighten out. And as much as I like and really respect President Xi, we have to straighten out the trade imbalance. It's too much. It's no good.
Okay, Kieran Gilbert from Sky News.
Kieran Gilbert, Sky News Australia. General Mattis has called China a revisionist power and that there are growing threats from China, yet you're very positive about your relationship with Xi. Can you tell us, is it a friend or a foe? And on North Korea, the sanctions, if they don't work, are all options still on the table? Can I get your answer and also the Prime Minister's thoughts.
Well, to the second, we'll have to see. I don't think I'm going to exactly play that card, but we'll have to see. If the sanctions don't work, we'll have to go phase two. And phase two may be a very rough thing, may be very, very unfortunate for the world. But hopefully the sanctions will work. We have tremendous support all around the world for what we're doing. It really is a rogue nation. If we can make a deal, it'll be a great thing. And if we can't, something will have to happen. So we'll see. As far as General Mattis is concerned, I mean, he has that view, and a lot of people have that view. China's tough. They're getting stronger. They're getting stronger to a large extent with a lot of the money they've made from having poor leadership in the United States, because the United States leadership has allowed them to get away with murder. With that being said, I think we can have a truly great, even trading relationship with China. Hopefully that's going to work out, and hopefully the relationship I have with President Xi will make that happen. Only time will tell. Thank you.
Well, I can confirm that President Trump and President Xi see eye to eye in every respect, and they have a. It's very clear at the meetings I've been at, which we've attended in the region, the East Asia Summit, and so forth, APEC, the respect that they have with each other, and I think it's the single most important relationship between China and the United States. It's clearly very respectful, very frank, very clear-eyed. For our own part, we see China's rise as being overwhelmingly a positive for the region and for the world. The critical thing, of course, is the rule of law is maintained. You know, that is, you know, there are people that want to try to paint the United States and its allies like Australia as being against China in some sort of rerun of the Cold War. You know, that is not appropriate. It's not accurate. What we need to ensure is that the rules of the road, the rule of law, the rules-based system, where, you know, big countries can't push around little countries, where, to quote Lee Kuan Yew all those years ago, where you don't have a world where the big fish eat the little fish and the little fish eat the shrimps, where you have that rule of law that protects everybody. That is what has enabled the great growth in our region. That's what's enabled hundreds of millions of people in our region, and including in China, to be lifted out of poverty. So maintaining that rules-based order is what we are committed to, and we all have a vested interest in doing so. And I just want to say again to the President that his presence, his own personal presence in our region at the end of last year sent such a powerful message. The regular visits by Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, and of course the presence of the United States Navy and so many other manifestations of American commitment to the region is so important to maintaining that rules-based order. Believe me, that has been the foundation of the success, the prosperity, and the security these last 40 or more years.
I don't think we've ever had a better relationship with China than we do right now. The only thing that can get in its way is trade, because it's so one-sided, it's so lopsided, and the people that stood here for many years in this position, right where I am right now, should never have allowed that to happen. It's very unfair to the United States, and it's very unfair to the workers of the United States. Very, very unfair. And even today, it's extremely hard on companies that want to do business in China, because the barriers are incredible, whereas the barriers coming into our country are foolishly not. Foolishly. I believe in reciprocal trade. If they do something to us, we do something to them. Well, that never happened. And it's gotten worse and worse over the years, but we'll correct it. That can be the only thing that can get in the way of a truly long-term great relationship, because we have all the ingredients for friendship. From the Washington Examiner, Gabby.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Chief of Staff, General Kelly, has recommended ending the practice of granting interim security clearances to members of the Trump administration. Yeah. If that proceeds, would you be willing to grant a waiver to Jared Kushner, one of your senior advisors?
Well, Jared's done an outstanding job. I think he's been treated very unfairly. He's a high-quality person. He works for nothing, just so, nobody ever reports that, but he gets zero. He doesn't get a salary, nor does Ivanka, who's now in South Korea, long trip, representing her country, and we cannot get a better representative. In fact, the First Lady, Melania, was telling me what a great impression she made this morning when she landed in South Korea. Jared is truly outstanding. He was very successful when he was in the private sector. He's working on peace in the Middle East and some other small and very easy deals. They've always said peace in the Middle East, peace between the Palestinians and Israel is the toughest deal of any deal there is. Now, I've heard this all my life, that as a former deal maker, although now you could say maybe I'm more of a deal maker than ever before, you have no choice as president to do it right. But the hardest deal to make of any kind is between the Israelis and the Palestinians. We're actually making great headway. Jerusalem was the right thing to do. We took that off the table. But Jared Kushner's right in the middle of that, and he's an extraordinary deal maker. And if he does that, that will be an incredible accomplishment and a very important thing for our country. So General Kelly, who's doing a terrific job, by the way, is right in the middle of that. We inherited a system that's broken. It's a system where many people have it's taken months and months and months to get many people that do not have a complex complicated financials. They don't have that, and it's still taken months. It's a broken system, and it shouldn't take this long. You know how many people are on that list? People with not a problem in the world. So that'll be up to General Kelly. General Kelly respects Jared a lot, and General Kelly will make that call. I won't make that call. I will let the general, who's right here, make that call. But Jared's doing some very important things for our country. He gets paid zero. Ivanka, by the way, gets paid zero. She gave up a very good and very strong, solid, big business in order to come to Washington because she wanted to help families and she wanted to help women. She said, Dad, I want to go to Washington. I want to help women. And I said, Washington's a mean place. She said, I don't care. I want to help women. I want to help families. And she was very much involved, as you know, in the child tax credit. And now she's working very much on family leave, things that I don't think would have been in the agreement if it weren't for Ivanka. And some of our great senators, et cetera. But she was very much in the forefront of that. So I will let General Kelly make that decision. And he's going to do what's right for the country. And I have no doubt he'll make the right decision. Okay? Thank you very much.
Prime Minister, your country conducted a buyback program of semi-automatic weapons back in the mid-'90s and hasn't had a mass shooting ever since. Is this something that you've discussed with President Trump, and did you at all urge him to reconsider his current recommendations to combat mass shootings in the United States?
Well, our history with gun control and regulation is obviously very different to the United States. And you're right, there was a mass shooting in Tasmania in 1996. And my predecessor, John Howard, who's very well known here in the United States, Prime Minister for nearly 12 years, John undertook some very big reforms. And basically, semi-automatic and let alone automatic weapons are essentially not available. Indeed, there are many classes of the range of firearms that are available to people that don't have a specific, professional need, like, people who are involved in pest control and so forth, are very, very limited. But it's a completely different context, historically, legally, and so forth. We are very satisfied with our laws. We maintain them. They're there, they're well known, you've referred to them, but we certainly don't presume to provide, a policy or political advice on that matter here. This is you have an amendment to your constitution which deals with gun ownership. You have a very, very different history, and I will focus on our own political arguments and debates, and wish you wise deliberation in your own.
And I have to add to that, they're very different countries with very different sets of problems. But I think we're well on the way to solving that horrible problem that happens far too often in the United States. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. Thank you.
That was the joint press conference with President Trump and Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull of Australia. It was interesting. It ended a little sooner than I thought, because normally on those press conferences, from what I remember, usually there are 3 questions from American journalists and 3 questions from the foreign journalist from whatever country the guest is from. Today, there were only 2. We only saw 2 questions asked from American journalists and 2 from, I believe only 2 from Australian journalists. Definitely 2 from American journalists. Very interesting also that and some of the journalists asked multiple questions. But the 2 American journalists called on to ask questions by President Trump were Trey Yingst from One American News, and I don't know her name, but a journalist from the Washington Examiner. So mainstream media did not get called on at all during the press conference. I'm sure they're incredibly angry about that. And that doesn't happen normally. I can't remember the last... Now, and I very well could be forgetting 1 or 2 of them. But it seems to me usually at least some of the people called on, if not most of them or all of them, are the mainstream media figures. So very interesting that the only 2 reporters, American reporters, President Trump called on were one from One American News, one from Washington Examiner, both conservative organizations. I believe, this is one of these things where I'm 99% sure, but I want to make sure on the Washington Examiner. Hang on one second. I don't want to give you false information. Yeah, it's conservative leaning. I'm so scared of saying something wrong that I check these things that I probably don't have to check. But anyways, no mainstream media, no CNN, no MSNBC. I was tweeting with Joe Seals, the CEO of Rightside, and I was asking him, I was telling him, we were talking about the briefing, and he said, well, the press conference, and he said, well, maybe Fox will get the 3rd question, because he'll call on somebody from the mainstream media, and that was just the end of the briefing. Anyways, we want to hear from you. What did you think about the briefing? Give me a shout at I keep saying briefing, the press conference. What did you think about the press conference? Give me a shout on Twitter. I'm at Lookner. Let me know. I'm going to read your comments on the air. Also, I want to say a big thank you to some people who donated. Happy Camper and Tuesday is Gone and Christine Bestian have all made donations today. Tuesday is Gone gave $100. Amazing. So we appreciate your donations, because that's how we stay on the air. We cover all of President Trump's events, and we cover breaking news besides that. But your donations are what keeps us on the air. So if you want to donate to Right Side Broadcasting and support us, go to the bottom of the YouTube chat, click on the $sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat. There's a little $sign there. Or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. I'm going to talk about some of the things President Trump said in the press conference, but I want to hear from you, see if anybody wrote me in yet and said, Joey Diaz said, is Australia a better ally than England? Now, I don't know. I'm trying to remember at some point, are you asking me just a random question? Or are you saying at some point did somebody say this is like the best friend we have? I mean, they're both strong allies. I mean, look, we've probably have stronger ties with England in the sense of, we fought in World War II with them and things like that. But Australia is a strong ally. But I mean, I don't know. How are we ranking allies? I guess if you ask the average person, and the average if you ask the average person in the United States government, is Australia, which is a better ally, they'd say England is a better ally. But I don't really know how we're judging better allies. So England is certainly a more influential ally. I don't know if we have any closer ally than we do England. Let's see here. All right, so write to me let me know what you thought about the press conference at Luckner. And also, so let me talk for a second about some of what was said. Maybe the biggest, most newsworthy thing said in the press conference is there was a question for President Trump from an Australian journalist, which was something like, if the sanctions don't work, are all the options still on the table? And President Trump said, well, we'll have to see. If the sanctions don't work, we'll have to maybe move on to phase 2. And then he said phase 2 would be very rough, and he said phase 2 may be very unfortunate for the world. So I don't know if there's a specific thing President Trump has in mind for phase 2 and what exactly he might be thinking of. But he did say phase 2 would be very unfortunate for the world and very rough. So that was interesting. Also, someone asked about, I think the Washington Examiner reporter asked about Jared Kushner. So General Kelly, Chief of Staff Kelly, is putting in a new system where people with interim security clearances, whose background checks aren't done and whose security clearance isn't, I guess, fully confirmed, they will not get complete access to all classified information unless General Kelly gives them a waiver. And so President Trump was asked, will you give Jared Kushner a waiver since he still has an interim security clearance? And President Trump, in the course of his answer, basically said it's up to General Kelly. So he didn't say yes. He said it's up to General Kelly. Now, maybe they've discussed it, but he said it's up to General Kelly, and I'm sure General Kelly will make the right decision. So that was also interesting. Anyways, give me a shout. What did you think about the briefing? At Luckner on Twitter, at Luckner. And also thank you to our moderators. Real Frank is there in the chat room. JC is there. Guinevere. Common Sense and Gleno on the website. Barbara Braley. So thank you to all the moderators. I wonder if I can find you a little clip of the phase 2 thing. I thought that was newsworthy. You know what? I bet I can find it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find it. I'll find it myself. And I'll show it to you. All right, hang on, guys. So what I'm doing is I'm going to our broadcast, and I'm finding where this question was asked. Okay. That's not it. Here it is. I got it. Let's watch this. This is where President Trump talks about phase 2.
If they don't work, are all options still on the table? Can I get your answer and also the Prime Minister's thoughts?
Well, to the second, we'll have to see. I don't think I'm going to exactly play that card, but we'll have to see. If the sanctions don't work, we'll have to go phase 2. And phase 2 may be a very rough thing, may be very, very unfortunate for the world. But hopefully the sanctions will work. We have tremendous support all around the world.
So there he said phase 2 could be a very rough thing, very rough for the world. So that's certainly very unfortunate for the world. So that was a noteworthy moment. Reagan Better, I'm not aware of this. Reagan Better just wrote to me, Trump this morning wanted to change legal age for firearms to 21 and the NRA was against it. Where is your source for this, Reagan Better? I've heard this nowhere. I've never heard President Trump said he wanted to change the legal age for firearms to 21. He's talked about maybe maybe raising the age of, one idea would be maybe raise the age for certain weapons to purchase to be 21, but I'm not aware of him wanting to change the legal age for firearms to 21. You'll have to give me a source on that, Reagan, better before I believe you. Joey Diaz says, President Trump is right about the gun control issue. The only way to defend against guns is with guns. Now, President Trump, he is proposing, he reiterated his proposals in that press conference for how to deal with the school shootings issue. He said, on the one hand, he wants stronger background checks, particularly involving mentally ill people not being able to get guns. He talked about wanting to ban bump stocks, but at the same time, he says we need more offensive capability in the schools and we need trained teachers with guns. He really supports that idea. Greg Jackson writes in, before people refer to Australia, they should look first at the history there. There was not a serious problem with those type of mass shootings. The vast majority of shootings there happen within families, so there's no correlation whatsoever with our country's issues. And I think what Greg is referring to in the press conference is there was a question to the Australian Prime Minister saying, like, hey, you guys put in really strict gun laws, back in 1996. Have you talked about your gun policies with President Trump? Have you discussed that about, in the context of maybe having policies like that here? And the Prime Minister of Australia said, well, we're happy with our gun laws, but we wouldn't offer advice to the U.S. about it and tell them what, he basically said we wouldn't recommend what policy they should take. That's up to them. That's essentially what the Prime Minister said. He said, we're very satisfied with our laws, but we don't presume to provide advice on that here. And President Trump said they're very different countries. I think he said with different problems. And as to your point specifically, Greg, I'm not totally familiar with gun data in Australia, so I can't really speak intelligently on that. But thank you for writing in. So we are still taking your questions and comments on the air. Write to me at @Lookner if you have comments on the press conference. Let me know what you thought about it. Reagan Better, you sent me a story from Market Watch. Well, first of all, it says President Trump says anyone under 21 should be barred from buying a rifle or handgun. Where is that coming from? Because I haven't heard him mentioning that the last couple of days. And it says, it doesn't say said. So I don't know where this is coming from. What is this proposal? That is certainly not a proposal we've heard President Trump talking about the last few days. And the story is not that he said it this morning. That's not what the story says. So I'm still not buying it. Reagan Better. Joey Diaz writes, teachers and hold on, Royal Kitty sent me this too. Royal Kitty and Reagan Better sent me this one article, which doesn't cite what it's talking about, and it says, let me just show you what they're talking about so you know what I'm saying. There's a Market Watch article. I don't even know, what is Market Watch? That's a business site, I guess. It used to be CBS Market Watch, and there's an article that says Trump call for higher age limit on gun sales backed by some Republicans. Now, the only call I've heard him saying is bringing up the idea that maybe we'd want to raise the age for certain guns, not for all guns. And then the opening of the article says, President Trump says anyone under 21 should be barred from buying a rifle or handgun. Now, where is that coming from? I have not heard him say that the last few days. And it says, it doesn't cite a specific speech or anything. I wonder if the author is just wrong or just... Oh, before, look. Look at the bottom. Before he ran for president, Trump had long supported tighter gun laws. Now, he says, when is this? He surprised many conservatives with his call for uniform age limit. It should all be 21, he said. I don't see, where did he say this? I've heard him say this week that maybe it should be 21 to cover certain guns. I do not recall him saying this week all rifles and handguns should be only purchased by people 21 or over. Yeah, so a number of people in the chat room are saying he didn't say it, fake news. Yeah, so I think this person just did a very bad job reporting. Or whoever edited the article did a bad job editing it. But I am not buying it. You know, it's possible once in a while people just make mistakes. And that maybe that's not that person's beat. And they're not really familiar with what President Trump has been saying. But yeah, so, you know, any one article, I would never believe any one article. You always should cross-reference everything. That's my advice. Cross-reference everything.
Remarkable encounter with President Trump.
And somebody sent me another article. Yeah, look. Here we go. So Miss Rob Mob says he did say this. And it's an ABC News article, and look what it says. It says, the NRA will back it and so will Congress, Trump contended, as he called for raising the legal age of purchase for quote-unquote all guns from 18 to 21. A spokesman later said Trump was speaking specifically about semi-automatic weapons. And then in other appearances, he hasn't talked about it. So, for example, today I saw two appearances. I saw the speech at CPAC and I saw his appearance today, and he didn't mention that. He said we're looking at ideas, and he never mentioned that. He mentioned other specific proposals. So certainly it's incorrect to say that President Trump has adopted a policy is supporting the policy of a gun ban for everybody under 21 for all rifles and handguns. It's just not true. And it's questionable whether he's even supporting the 21 age limit for for semi-automatic weapons. He's brought it up at some points, but at other points he hasn't brought it up, which suggests he's not supporting it. Travel made a donation and says, CBS fake news and CBS smells like butt. Now, I don't know if CBS owns Market Watch anymore. It used to be CBS Market Watch, and now it's just Market Watch, so I don't know. But thank you, Travel, for the donation. And thanks for sending in those articles. Just, again, I would cross-reference everything, always. Wendy Giordano says, your reference on 21 age limit to assault rifles is last night's round table. Do you mean the town hall from 2 nights ago? And President Trump wasn't at that. So what round? Or do you mean the listening session from a couple days ago? Ophelia writes, and Steve, it sounds like Australia is bringing military jobs to America, or did I hear wrong? I believe what Prime Minister Turnbull was talking about was an Australian ship that was being built in Mobile, Alabama for the U.S. Navy. Let's see if I can find... So here's a story from 2016. Hold on a second. I'm trying to find a specific story about what they were talking about today in the press conference. Here we go. All right, hold on a second. We have, I think it's in here. President Trump says a U.S. combat ship will be named in honor of Australian cruiser that was lost fighting alongside the U.S. Navy in World War II. The ship will be named the USS Canberra. I thought they were talking about this being... That doesn't tell you where it was built. The Prime Minister definitely talked about a U.S. Navy ship being built in Mobile, Alabama. I know he mentioned that. But I can't find a news story on it. Now, I will say, look, here's an article from 2016 on the Australian shipbuilder Austal, and it says they have a U.S. headquarters on the Mobile River. So maybe that's what they were talking about. Austal USA is fulfilling as prime contractor a $3.5 billion contract with the U.S. Navy for 10 combat ships. So maybe that's one of the ones they're talking about. Because he did say, the Prime Minister, that they were building a U.S. Navy ship. Australians were building a U.S. Navy ship in Mobile. Or maybe he said an Australian company. I can't remember. Anyways. Royal Kitty says, I sent you 2 articles of the Trump saying about the guns. I already explained my view on that, Royal Kitty. It's not going to change. But thank you for sending them. And then Copernica sent me this tweet from President Trump, which again is not referring, I don't believe, to a ban on all guns purchased by people under the age of 21. Hold on a second. Let me just show you. This is when President Trump in the morning yesterday said, raise age to 21. He's not talking about handguns there. When he's talked about raising the age of 21, what he's been talking about is the possibility of raising the age for 21 for certain kind of semi-automatic weapons, not for all guns. He's using short. I think just because he says just raise age to 21, there's context about he doesn't explain the whole thing because he's been talking about it before. What his proposal is. So his proposal is not. It's not even a proposal because a lot of times he doesn't even mention it. But even that idea that's been floated around is not raising the age for 21 for all guns. That is not the proposal. All right, let me just see if there are any more comments here. If not, we're going to wrap up the stream. Yes, now Kathy Connor says, as we spoke about on our earlier show, earlier broadcast, Rick Scott did announce today a 21-year-old age limit on buying guns in Florida. We reported on that earlier, but I'll just show it again. See, it's weird. All right, this is bad because earlier I gotta unsend my earlier tweet because I saw tweets before saying Rick Scott said there's now a 21-year-old age limit to buy guns in Florida, and I said on the air, can he just declare that himself? And now I'm seeing Rick Scott revealed the state's new proposals to keep students safe. So I need to undo my tweet now my retweet before, because my retweet said that he had declared this, like he had the power to declare that that there's a 21-year-old age limit. Hang on. Now I got to go back and undo this retweet. If I can find it. Yeah, look. From ABC News. They said, Rick Scott said the state will require all individuals. They didn't say propose. That's ABC News. And the tweet's still up there. Now, this is his plan. It's a plan. He's backing it, but they haven't passed it yet. It's a proposal. So this is wrong. This tweet from ABC News is wrong, and they leave it up there. Unbelievable. Now, Reagan Better sent me a CBS News tweet saying at CPAC, President Trump said he'd like to increase the legal age to buy rifles like AR-15s to 21. Well, that's fine. Now, maybe I said earlier in the broadcast he didn't mention that today at CPAC. If I did, I was wrong. But my point is that the larger point is that he didn't propose that like everyone under 21 can't buy any kind of gun, which is what you guys were originally suggesting, which is what you were originally suggesting. So, Eric, so your message to me proves my point. But thank you for sending it in, Eric. Oh, Wendy, thank you for the link. I see what you're saying. I remember. I had forgotten about that roundtable. Wendy, thank you. School safety roundtable. In the morning, and yesterday. Okay, I got it. All right, I'm going to wrap up the stream. We got to all your comments. And if there's breaking news later today, we will cover it. We'll come on the air and cover it for you. But I appreciate all of you watching and sending in your comments and your emails and your links. Thank you to all of our moderators, Real Frank, Guinevere, Webster, JC. Who else is there? Looks like that's who's there right now. And Common Sense and Gleno on the website. Thanks to everybody who donated. We very much appreciate it. If you like Right Side Broadcasting's coverage, you want to see it continue, we are viewer supported. We rely on you to stay on the air, so you can donate if you want to by going to the bottom of the YouTube chat. Click on the dollar sign at the bottom of the YouTube chat, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Thank you to Jake Seals for producing. Great job, Jake. You can follow Jacob on Twitter at JacobRSBNMusic. And I am on Twitter at @Lookner. I'll be posting breaking news all day as usual. One last comment. Ophelia writes in, okay, not to seem cold-blooded, but I am so sick of the gun discussion. Well, it's going to continue. Maybe part of the reason you're sick of it is that it's been like nonstop news coverage of it the last week or so. The news likes to focus on like one issue at a time, like all day, rather than the multiple issues that are always going on. All right, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, people in the chat room. Thank you, Melancholy and Luciferin and Miss Rob Mob, Trees Climbing Gear, Timber Lab, Susan Reynolds, Kenneth Vaughn, Linda, Mordina, Leonidas, Happy Camper, GTO Mama, JC, Ida No, Light Switch, Swoosh, let's see here. And everybody else out there for watching. Appreciate it. All right, we're wrapping this up. Thanks for watching us. If there's big news later, we'll come on the air and cover it. For now, for myself, for Jake Seals, from all of us at Right Side Broadcasting, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you soon here at RSBN.